Good morning, everybody. Good to see you bright and early. How's everybody feeling today? Well, we have quite the day for you. Before I talk about what's happening right here, right now, I just wanted to quickly take you through what's happening the rest of the day. Back here in this room at 1 p.m., we've got a conversation with So-Called. We'll talk about whatever's on his mind, you never know. I just push a button and So-Called does his thing. And at 2 p.m., guy you may not have heard of, but we're thrilled to have him here. His name is Sam Sadegurski. He's here with a musical partner as a duo. And many of you are familiar with Marissa Scheinfeld's photographs of the crumbling Borscht Belt hotels, right? We even had them on exhibit here a number of years ago. And beautiful coffee table book. Well, anyway, Sam loved those photos and was inspired to write an entire instrumental song cycle inspired by them. So he's going to do that concert at 2 o'clock in the concert hall. Immediately followed back in here with Marissa Scheinfeld, the photographer, so the two of them can engage in a dialogue about, how this project all happened. And Marissa will bring a slideshow of her photography, so you'll get to see all that. So it's a very special, unique thing. They've never done this before. Glad to premiere it here at Yidstock. And then finally, at the end of the day, Friday at 5 o'clock, we have with us the Nigunim Trio, which many of you are familiar with. We've had them here before. The core of the trio, of course, is Frank London and Lawrence Sklamberg from the Klezmatics, along with multi-instrumentalist Rob Schwimmer. But this year, they will be joined by a special guest all the way from Brighton, England, and that's clarinetist Merlin Shepard. So the question is it the Nigunim Quartet, or is it the Nigunim Trio with special guest Merlin Shepard, or in honor of Matt Dariow of the Klezmatics, is it a Paradox Trio, he has a group called the Paradox Trio, and the paradox is that it's a quartet. Anyway, so we got a great day, and I hope you'll be able to stay with us all day and all weekend. How many of you will be here for the entire weekend? Wow, almost all of you. That's fantastic. Great. Thanks so much. Okay, this morning's program is made possible by the Stanley R. Epstein Fund at the Yiddish Book Center. And if it's pronounced Epstein, it's the Stanley R. Epstein Fund at the Yiddish Book Center. So I'm covering all my bases there. The title of the talk is Branya, Leon, Sid, Pete, Ruth, Chana, and Theo. And of course, you all know Hankus Netsky. That is why you're here, not to listen to me extemporize here. So just quickly a few words about Hankus. Hankus is so essential to this entire Yiddish music and cultural revival. He's also been an inextricable part of the history of the Yiddish Book Center, you may not know, from the very beginning in many different capacities. Of course, you all know the Klezmer Conservatory Band. And Hankus as a teacher at the New England Conservatory, you look at the population of klezmer bands and Yiddish music and a lot of avant-garde jazz, actually, and all of these people have gone through Hankus's classes. So really, he has inspired and spawned and mentored the entire body of music that we feature here at Yidstock every year. So without further ado, please give a warm Yidstock welcome to Hankus Netsky.
Well, thank you for waking up early. They didn't keep you too late last night, so that's a good thing. So today, that is so wrong. So you guys, okay, they had it muted for a while, but now we'll put it on here. That's fine. We'll just have to use this. I hope you don't have your sunglasses on because project. The other ones will be higher quality. This was actually videoed at Kles Camp the very first year. So they didn't have very good lighting in the casino back then. Okay, so what this is about today is very different from what I spoke about yesterday, but very much related to what Krista spoke about yesterday. Because Krista was using excerpts from the Wexler Oral History Project, which is a fantastic project that's been going on since about 2010, documenting the generation that is still alive and contributing to the world of, just to give us a window into Eastern European Jewish culture, both in Europe, really all over the world, and in America. And it's an incredible project, and I'm very much part of that, and I've done quite a few interviews for them, and that's great. But the truth is, this particular resurgence of Eastern European Jewish music as a wellspring for creative activity really started, I would say, in the mid-20th century, and was rekindled very much in the late 1970s. And a bunch of the people who we saw in Krista's lecture from the Oral History Project are those people who started to rekindle the interest in this and get material out there in the 1970s. But our teachers were not documented. There's only one person that I'm going to talk about here who there's actually an oral history of from the Yiddish Book Center, and the only reason that there is she lived way long. So she was still around to do that when we were doing it, and that's Chana Malotic. But all the other ones were gone by the time this oral history project started. We did hear from Pete Socolow yesterday, so I'm not going to focus on Pete Socolow at all today, because I didn't realize that we would hear from Pete, and we heard enough from Pete, and we heard everything about you need to know about Pete. But these are really our mentors, you know. I mean, that's the thing. These are our mentors. These are the people who taught us everything we know about this music. And when we started, we needed them really badly, because as Henry Sapoznik beautifully articulated in the film The Jumpin' Night in the Garden of Eden, if you're just going to learn from 78s and recordings, then the depth of your knowledge will be the thickness of the 78. And actual oral transmission of a culture requires engagement with the people who are teaching you. And then you can really draw conclusions. So I've been very lucky in my life to have mentors who have really taught me through oral tradition. And I mean, maybe next year I'll give a talk on that. But today I'm going to focus on the mentors who really taught the largest number of people who helped to revive this music one-on-one. And so without any ado, I'm going to just start going on this, because you guys are going to have something to say at the end, I'm sure. And the first two contacts that we're going to talk about both came through Michael Alpert, who was very involved as an instigator for this whole thing. And Michael Alpert, I mean, I could talk about Ben Beisler, I could talk about Hirsch Rickelman, I mean, all these people, but they were not so involved in teaching. There were really two who left an indelible effect on our generation and an incredible legacy to transmit to the next generation. So I'm going to start with those. And the first one is Bronya Sakina. So she was born in Olvanisk in southern Ukraine. And she was born around the time of the beginning of the 20th century, and there's nothing on the internet about her. You can find out almost nothing. Michael has been claiming for at least 40 years that he's going to publish something. I believe it. I believe it. Okay. I believe with perfect faith that Michael Alpert will someday publish something about Bronya Sakina. But her legacy is preserved as a teacher. So we're going to go right to that. And what we're going to hear is something that I think has a tremendous amount to teach all of the generations to come about the essence of Jewish music. And I'm going to say, without any doubt, that what I've learned in 43 years of doing this like full tilt is that the essence of Eastern European Jewish music is vulnerability. And that's what makes it unique in the musics of the world. That's what makes it unique from any other kind of Jewish music. And that doesn't mean it's all sad. It's laughing through tears, people always say, right? So it's irony around vulnerability. That's a huge theme in Yiddish folk song, that irony around vulnerability. And it's in everything. It's in Hasidic music, it's in Chazanis, it's in the Yiddish theater, it's in Yiddish folk song, it's in klezmer. And that generation taught us that. So that's something we're going to learn from our first two people. And so Bronya is going to sing a song, and the song is Papier ist doch weiß und Tinit ist doch schwarz. So what is the vulnerability? Well, it's about love. When your lover has been drafted into the Tsar's army for 3 years. Or something is going to take this person away for 3 years. I'm pretty sure it would have been that, because that was how long they served. And this woman is expressing vulnerability through this song and teaching us how to express vulnerability through music, through Jewish music, through Eastern European Jewish music. And that is by reaching up and then sliding down. Ba 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 hi right? I did that yesterday too. Okay, if I had to explain Jewish music in less than 3 seconds, that's how I do it. And so let's hear her. Oh, what happened? Oh, I know. She's going to sing 2 folk songs, is what she said. Come on, do it. Oh my God, what is that? Okay, Adrian taught me that usually you can like click on this and it'll go away. Adrian! Oh, there's an X. I see an X. I love X's. Yay, the X is there. I found the X. Okay, here we go. All right. Oh, I now have to click on that one too. Okay, let's do that again. You hear it? I'll give you one more verse. I went to a wedding.
Viele schöne Mädchen habe ich dort gesehen.
there were many beautiful women there.
Oi fileşeyne meydelach Emay sonye kim tmira for Tire schwarzinke gala
But your black eyes could not be equaled. Oh, one more verse.
Dajen tali, dajen figura, dajen scheinedler fason.
This woman is a hot ticket.
Meine Herzen brennt auf Feuer.
There's a fire burning in my heart.
Seht nicht ohne den Flom. Meine Herzen brennt auf Feuer. Keiner seht nicht den Reue. Die 3 Uhr zu warten auf dir. Ich hab schon nicht keine Keule.
Okay, got the point? Right? So this was very important for us to learn, and to learn it from a person who embodied it. You know, a Russian emigre who in so many times in her life was in such peril, and she survived. She's okay. And I'll teach you a song. So this is Bronya. Now, Bronya also taught us how to dance. And Jewish dancing also has lots of vulnerability. That's really part of it. It's not macho. When they wanted to get macho, they learned from their friends in Odessa. No, but the actual Jewish dance is a dance that the grandmother did, you know, from all her experience. So we all got to meet our great-grandparents through Bronya Sakina. And that was very, very important. Now, as for our great-grandfather, we all got to meet this guy. And this guy is Leon Schwartz. And the cool thing about Leon Schwartz was he was a floor wax and a dessert topping. He could play the fiddle and he could sing, right? And that was amazing because, again, you listen to the records, but you don't meet the person and find out all their background and find out that in fact, that fiddler you're listening to was about to fiddle also. He could lead services, you know. It wasn't like we have here. Secular Judaism, don't listen to the religious people. Well, wait a minute, if you don't listen to religious people, you're not going to get how to yearn, you know, from the source. Don't listen to the Hasidim, their politics are terrible. Wait a minute, if you don't listen to the Hasidim, you're not going to understand spirituality. So that dichotomy crumbled as soon as we started doing this. And believe me, we grew up with it. We grew up with it. We know the organizations were very divided for very good reasons, for very good reasons. But the reasons have crumbled. The reasons have crumbled. If you're trying to do culture, because you can't take gospel music and say, but R&B, no, can't listen to that, you know. You can't listen to spirituals, you know, and then say, but we're not going to listen to, you know, we're not going to listen to hip-hop. I mean, you want roots, you got to put the whole culture together and acknowledge it's all one thing. And this culture is an incredible, as Leon liked to say, an incredible Weltler, a little world, a little world. So here's Leon playing the fiddle, and Leon, born around the same time, he's 87 when you're seeing him here, and he taught Michael Alpert fiddle, and he taught all of us a lot about the spiritual side of Jewish music. So here he is playing. Did you see his finger slide up? Watch his fingers. Woo! Woo! Don't you want to dance? You don't need a drum. All you need is a fiddle. And believe me, this guy would be the only musician at a wedding in the Bukovina where he was from. But everyone would be dancing because he knows what to do. He understands the rhythms are yubba bubba. There are no written rhythms here at all. You can't write these rhythms down at all. Woo, what is that? They just float. Vulnerability. They're not Bach. And when he plays the violin, it speaks. He scripts the violin, right? Skrippe. But he also zogs. The fiddle speaks. He makes the fiddle speak. If you can't make the fiddle speak, you're not a klezmer. You know. And he taught people how to make the fiddle speak. Now, I'm not saying that everybody in the current generation has taken this lesson. They haven't. But these videos are out there. That's great. And I've been teaching this since 1980, and I know how to do it because I knew this guy, you know? And I mean, people take cultures wherever they want, and in this resurgence, it's not always going back to these roots. I'm very aware of that. But I just spent, so I'm going to tell you that I just spent 3 days down in Westchester County, and I don't mean New York, I mean Pennsylvania, with people from Aleph, from Jewish Renewal. So, wow, why would that be? Well, somebody needs to teach cantors how to sound Jewish. And I've done that for the last 6 years. The only reason I know how to do it is people like Leon. So I'm gonna play you the first thing that I did with them. And this is a very interesting lesson. Here, we can actually, this is my great visual here. How do you like it? And the first thing I do is I write on the board, Asher nasan lanu toiras emes v'chayei olam nota b'soichenu, which means, now the people who never know what that means are my Israeli students. The first question I always get is, what language is this? It's not Yiddish, it's not Hebrew. I don't understand. But the fact is that even the ones who had bar mitzvahs here, as far as they're concerned, they learned Asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Well, that's not going to get you here. That's not going to get you this at all. No way. It has nothing to do with it. It's going to have to be like this.
Asher nasalonu Torah semes, Asher nasalonu Torah semes, Asher nasalonu Torah semes, Torah semes.
There's the line I sang.
V'chayei olam nota b'soichenu, V'chayei olam nota b'soichenu, V'chayei olam nota b'soichenu.
So there's our great-grandfather. Okay, you all agree? I mean, unless, you know, I mean, and people who are not from this culture, great, even better. Because that's our great-grandfather. So welcome to the culture. Now, the point is, what he's saying is the one who gave us the Torah of truth, and through that planted within us the seed of eternal life. Okay, you don't have to believe that necessarily, or you could. Either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's where the seed of the vulnerability is, right? In the religion, which is like, you know, you read a chapter and the Jews like do pretty well, and then you read the next one and they're all getting swallowed up. So, you know, if you've been to synagogue, that's the story. Yeah, you don't have to go now. Okay. Wow, I just saved some people like $5,000 a year. Okay, so, but the point is, it's all there, you know? It's all there in the way he's singing. So I made them all sing, and then I made them all listen to him talk about growing up?
This is the atmosphere I was brought up in.
Okay, so he can also help you speak English better. This was the atmosphere I was brought up in.
And
Why are they doing
education
whatever
was
they're
a
doing?
cheder.
Why are they vacuuming in this hallway during this lecture? Okay, these are the eternal Jewish questions. Here we go.
I remember the first day I went to cheder because they carried me to cheder.
So there's the reason to be religious. I remember the first day I went to cheder, that's the primary Jewish homeschooling, because they carried me to cheder. Okay,
The cheder, the very first thing that what they taught you is to be able to read the siddur.
aha, not the Siddur, but the Siddur, right? The first day of cheder, they taught me to read the Siddur.
And never forget it with the way that Getzel Schwartz used to say, Leibele.
That's his teacher.
He used to get up, ja, Rebbe. Buchstabieren. You had the word buchstabieren. Komets
Repeat
Aleph,
after me.
O, Komets Beis, Bo, Komets Gimel, Go, and then O, Bo, Go.
Now we learn that if you see a little T under a Hebrew word, it's O. It's not ah, it's O. Kametz Aleph O. Kametz Beis Bo. And we sing it. Kametz Aleph O. Kametz Beis Bo. Kametz Gimel Go.
Segel Aleph, Segel Beis, Be.
And he picks up his fiddle. And he shows us. Oh boy. He's not Itzhak Perlman, but he's got a lot to tell us about being Jewish. Everything. That's Jewish rhythm. Yeah, right? You can't hold on to it. It's gonna go away till the next time. And then you try, you reach, you know? And that's the nature of Jewish culture. In dance, in everything. But again, there's a lot of other models in the 20th century. A lot of other models. I couldn't give a damn for any of them. Because this is our roots. This is what it is before people messed with it, you know? And these were our teachers. Now, let me just go to this guy now. We're going to talk about Sid Beckerman. So Sid Beckerman was a little bit younger. So we're going to start by hearing his father, Shloimeh Beckerman. So Sid Beckerman and Pete Sokolow came to Klez Camp, actually not from the beginning, like Pete said, but the second year. And taught us how to play a Jewish wedding. And taught us how musicians learn to play a Jewish wedding, which was basically to really listen to the klezmer, be able to play your instrument, pick up a tune, hearing it once, or not even hearing it at all. So here's Sid's father, and Sid's born like in about 1920. So that's, you know, he's a little bit younger than these people who were born around the turn of the century. But here's his father, just to hear the virtuosity of the klezmer from the 20s. Woo! So there's the clarinet speaking. As I said, you'd be able to dance. If anyone wants to get up and dance, you're missing the dance workshop, so if you need to do that, okay. And so he taught his son. He taught his son very well. And here's a typical moment of Sid Beckerman, just Pete Socolow, go up on stage. The deal is this. Everybody, bring your instrument, get up on stage, and join in if you dare. And I would say that this record, the staff concerts from Klezkamp, is, if you want to find the worst example of me playing music ever, it will be me trying to play with Pete and Sid. You'll hear it. Here we go, because this is Pete and Sid. Idea what they're going to play next? Forget it. What they play is what they play. You better know all the tunes. This goes on for 20 minutes. Ah, he changed key. Uh-oh. Don't you want to go back and have your wedding again? But he's not available. But we try. Okay, there's so much there. There's so much to pick up. And if you know Sydney, you could learn to be a chain smoker. And they didn't have much to say about this because they didn't talk. They played. So fine. So that's okay. So you listen and you learn. You listen very carefully, and you really learn from these people. So the next person is somebody who many of you know, but some of you don't. There she is. Who am I talking about? Ruth Rubin. So Ruth Rubin, also a little before 1900, born then, dies in 1999, I think. She lived a long, long time. She had Alzheimer's her last, I'd say, 7 years. And she was really funny because she didn't remember that she was a singer in those years. But what she remembered, and it was fun, it was very funny. Can I tell you a story? Oh, it's kind of a riot, actually. This is great. So Mark Slobin, and she was also like a scholar and a singer. And I was visiting her with Mark Slobin and all my students from Wesleyan, and I say, Ruth, this is Mark Slobin. She goes like, you're a very nice young man. I have no idea who you are. Okay, And she said, no, so Mark goes like, oh, come on, we worked on books together, and we're on these, we did all these projects, and oh my God, he sat on a panel for years at YIVO. And she looks at him and she goes, YIVO, ich hab sie entdreht. Now, I'm a member of YIVO. Many of you are members of YIVO. But as far as Ruth was concerned, YIVO can go to hell. Because they never cared about anything she did. They never hired her to teach, what she really knew, or tried to kind of put her on as a scholar to collect Yiddish folk songs. No, But every now and then, will you be on a committee? We're not going to pay you. What? Okay. So, very interesting. So I'm just going to say that's how she was. Now, but what she remembered was she was a dancer. So she led the dancing, which was kind of amazing. Okay, so here we go. So here's Ruth in her typical presentation style.
And the ceremonies were finished, and everything was now gay. In some places they celebrated for 7 whole days, depending upon your economic status, I suppose. So then they really had fun. And here,
okay, so depending on what time of day you asked her, Ruth was born either in Bessarabia or Montreal. And she worked as a stenographer. That's what she did, because nobody in the Jewish community wanted to empower her to do what she really did. She was trained as a folklorist, and her life's work was to collect Yiddish folk song, 2,000 of which are now on the YIVO website, as by Eleonora Buzinski, and ironically enough, and you can find them, and you can research the whole collection. It's incredible. It's incredible what you can find, all of her work. But she made her living, besides the stenography thing, going to Hadassah chapters mostly, and doing a presentation where she explained about the songs, and then she sang them. So this is what we got here. This is from the movie A Life in Song. Cindy Marshall documented this.
there was a little square dance which they danced, which is half nonsense and half wit, whatever. But the melody is gay, absolutely, when the lid was off. This too was Bessarabian. Hat sich mir der Sitze sitten, hat sich mir zerbrochen, hat sich mir der Schicht zerrissen, tanz von meile Socken, tanz gegen mir und ich gegen die, die ist mit der Meide, mein Echel nehmen die Schnier. Zerbrochen ist der Lockschentopf verbrennt, der Hete, tanzen die Martines, ist die Kalle in der Mitte, tanz gegen mir und ich gegen die ist mit der Meide, mein Echel nehmen die Schnier. Ich muss sagen, kann ich die ganze Mischpoche, tanzen auf der Gassen in Masel in einem Bruch, tanz gegen mir und ich gegen die ist mit der Meide, aber Echel nehmen the
Dance opposite me, and I'll dance opposite you. Okay. And Chusn Saad, Kaldas Saad, die ganze Mischbuche tanzen auf dem Chassene. In Masel und in Bruche. I don't need to translate that, right? Okay, cool. So the point is, Ruth would teach anyone who would listen. I was very, very lucky. I actually met Ruth for the first time here. Now, this building wasn't around. We were in the schoolhouse back then. But Aaron Lansky calls me up. He goes, like, I've got Ruth Rubin here. You better come out here. So I'm like, okay. and I raised my hand during the lecture, and I said, so Ms. Rubin, just tell me, like, where can we go in the Jewish community? I mean, I'm a young scholar, a very real enthusiast of this music, and I'm trying to find a way to get support to study it and collect it. Who can I go to? And she looks at me and she says, young man, you will never get any support for doing anything in this music. And and then afterwards, the two of us washed the dishes from the reception and and sang Yiddish folk songs the whole time. And we were, from then on, lifelong friends. She took my kids on the swan boats when she went to Boston. I mean, it was incredible. And I had her twice at New England Conservatory. We gave her an honorary doctorate. She was an amazing teacher from the point of view of a folklorist. And none of these other people were folklorists. She was a trained folklorist, and she was amazing. Ooh, look at that. So beautiful. Okay, let's go to Chana Mlatek. This is another style. So you can see this is not somebody who got up on stage and sang, right? But we couldn't do anything without her. So she was at YIVO. For one reason, she was Oriel Weinreich's secretary. And then she convinced them they should have somebody catalog the music collection. And she did that, and she started writing this column called Pearls of Yiddish Folk Song in the foreword, where people would send her the background of all the songs. And she collected everything. Now, I want to just give you a little moment of Chana as a creative person. Here she is. So she wrote this song.
In the chain of land van Chumash, fleeing it's the boy won't lie. Lustig is the sun and bottom, it's the Kalten heute schwan. Lustig is the sun and bottom, fleeing it's the boy won't lie. In the chain of land van Chumash, says the yam to be shot.
Okay, she's like, there weren't any songs for Tu B'Shvat, so I wrote a song for Tu B'Shvat. Because she was a music teacher for Shalom Aleichem clubs and for Arbiter Ring, and so she put together that book of Jewish holiday songs. But her real legacy, and by the way, and she came to all the class camps, and she and Yassel Mlatek would do these workshops where they'd go through the songs, they'd talk about them, then they'd sing them, kind of like that. But her real legacy is this, which is YiddishSongs.org. Songs. Okay, so these books, you see the 5 books? These are the 5 books of Chana. For those who I just convinced not to go to synagogue, these are the ones you want to read every week. Okay, so not only that, but for every song, as you can see, you get a description. Whatever Chana knew, she wrote down. Okay? So there we go. Published by A Good Morgen, Fege Solche. Folk song published by Moshe Baragovsky in 1962. I mean, yes, you're not going to find another annotated collection of Yiddish folk song that's like this. And furthermore, you go to another page, and you get all the lyrics. You get all the lyrics. Thanks to her children for doing this, by the way. This is kind of an incredible project, You get recordings of the songs right there. You can just click on them, and they're there for you. I don't know if she got any permission from anybody. They don't care. But I mean, amazing. So Chana was essential, absolutely essential. I'm going to just go to one more. So our last person that we have to look at is Theo Bikel. Now, Theo Bikel is not somebody who I really have to play you, because your parents all had his records. And Theo Bikel, born in Vienna, again, quite a while ago, like in about 1920, and got out of Vienna on the last, everybody got out on the last something. Got out of Vienna because his grandfather knew somebody could get them to Israel. They got to Israel, 1938. And they arrive, and he's not wild about Israel, because all they have him doing is cleaning out chicken coops on farms. So he's like, chickens are disgusting. I'm going to learn to play the guitar and sing, and then I can get out of work. And 1941, goes to England and goes to college for theater school. So he becomes an actor. He was the original Baron von Trapp in The Sound of Music. The song Edelweiss was written for him, not as all his fans go like, oh, that song Edelweiss, I remembered it so well from when I was a child in Vienna. No. It was written for The Sound of Music. And his career, I think, was the most incredible of any of these people, because he never left this culture. And everything that happened at every point, he joined in and was part of it. So so when we start the resurgence, he's with us. He's just one of us. He's just one of us. He'll play for nothing. Doesn't matter. Huge Hollywood actor, head of the Screen Actors Guild. And yet, he'll do it for free. And we would play, and I actually introduced him to his third wife, okay? The fourth one he met on his own. He just joined us. I mean, so there are recordings. You can get Rock the Belts, which is Theo Bickel with singing bells, with Josh Dolgan turning it into house music. So literally, I mean, like booming, like rocking music for a rave. And Theo was into it. It didn't matter. He formed his group with Merima and Shura, toured the world. This serendipity trio. I played at all the festivals at Krakow. And he came to Close Canada 6 times. I mean, every year it's like, oh, I'm going to that. I got to go to that festival. He taught my daughter how to sing Ich will nicht gehen in Cheder. Which is, I will not go to Hebrew school. Okay, so the recording I'm going to play is a little bit sad because it is a month before he died. We're at Evo here. And the film Theo in the Shoes of Shalom Aleichem had just come out, and he was promoting it on the road at 91. But he felt that was important to go out there and tell people, we got this film made. I was the composer and music director for that film. They have it, I believe, in the bookshop. So it's absolutely worth going if you want to know all about his life and his connection to Jewish culture. What I want to play you, but Theo was interesting because he sort of felt, one of the things he would say is, after my generation is gone, who's going to teach these people? I'm like, us? But they scripted the movie to make it look really bad. like nobody's there to teach. Meanwhile, you're looking at them singing, and there's like the entire band is in their 30s. Okay, so I'm going to close this formal part of playing these examples with Theo in his actually second last rendition of Die Sonne wird heruntergehen. The sun is going out over the hill. And you'll hear the younger musicians who are in the room joining him. Some of them know it, some of them don't. But he was able to do that.
Die Sonne wird heruntergehen unter dem Park.
Same voice as in the
In
50s.
der Stille die Liebe zu gehen. Wird kommen der Stille die Liebe zu gehen. Beim Umed, wo sitzt auf a goldenem Stein. Und wen
There's
verliert
Daniel
einem allein.
His favorite. He loved
Beim
Daniel.
Umed, wo sitzt auf a goldenem Stein. Und wen verliert einem allein. The sun will be setting soon over the hill.
I don't have to translate because he
Love
always
will then
does.
come and show us her glow.
Whoa.
Love will then come and will show us her glow with splendor that twinkles and sparkles so. Aber hin, wo die Bergschaft wird ziehen, die Sonne wird heruntergehen unterm Berg, wird kommen a goldene Paare zu fliehen,
The golden
wird
peacock.
kommen a goldene Paare zu fliehen, und mitnehmen wir sie uns alle ahin, wo die Bergschaft wird ziehen.
You can sing.
Und mitnehmen wir sie uns alle ahin, wo die Bergschaft wird ziehen.
Who will go on? You guys, right? You know this. And not only that, you know it because of him. It's amazing. It's really something, the legacy of these people. So I just want to say, okay, so I teach at New England Conservatory, and the students I teach come from everywhere in the world. And in a class or ensemble of like 15 students, I'll be surprised if there's 5 who are Jewish. But this music is now part of all kinds of teaching. I mean, it's part of Village Harmony, where kids learn music from all over the world. When my kids went there, they didn't have Jewish music, but now it is. Paulina Shepard teaches for them. Silk Road's Global Musician Workshop is my next gig. You know, Alan Lomax's Global Musical Jukebox. Joel Rubin and I have been putting the entire Eastern European culture on that. So we've gone beyond the era of Klaskamp and Klas Canada, and you've just seen the greatest value of what those workshops have been on video, I believe, which was the transmission of the culture to a new generation of teachers. And we're now in an era where this tradition is appreciated by everyone who encounters it, and here's why. And don't let anybody give you any lip about this culture. Because the reason is, it is completely unique. The musical traditions of Eastern Europe, they're unique. It's unique among Jews. So if somebody says, oh, I like Jewish music, I go like, whoa, I wouldn't say that. You know, I can explain why I like this kind. I can't, you know, there's many things I'm like just shaking my head. I mean, that big purple dinosaur is kind of the big influence of this generation, I think. But okay, you can think about that for a second. But you know, these are musical traditions that evolved, and in many cases they lost their entire character in the transition to America and as the 20th century unfolded. I mean, the whole idea of Israeli music is to be macho, is like, we are here, hey, listen to this. You heard Pete Sokolow sing Artsa Alinu yesterday, right? I mean, that was not klezmer. And these are musical traditions which at their core, the expression of vulnerability is there, which is why in these times when the entire human race is more vulnerable than ever, they have a message for the entire world. Thank you. Okay.
About 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, sure. So comments, yes. She rocks. Chava Alberstein, yay! She fits in because she is continuity in the 1970s. I mean, she starts out in Israel more like as somebody who sings bossa novas, right? I mean, we know that. Like, she's like singing, she's like found as a young pop star, right? Because, you know, she's jazzy and she's folky and she can be Joan Baez. But she doesn't forget that her parents are Holocaust survivors. And she wants every Israeli to know this culture. And so every time I would see her, she'd do half Hebrew, half Yiddish, and she would, in fact, make sure that she did half Hebrew, half Yiddish, because she got her crowd in, and then she's like, and now. Okay. Now, she was not very involved in teaching, I have to say, so I can't look at her as that kind of mentor, but I met her many times, and she's great, and she was really a supporter of this movement, and her original songs are incredible, so get to Krenitsa for sure, you know, that's an incredible record. They have it in the gift shop, yes.
Where does Giora Feidman fit into this?
I would say not at all. Yeah, he's not at all. Giora Feidman was too much into himself to do this. First of all, he's an influence in Germany, but he doesn't play klezmer from the point of view of having listened to any of it except his father, but then he became a classical clarinetist, so he plays it very dramatically in a way that I always hear as a classical musician going maybe a quarter of the way toward playing the style. But let's talk about it afterwards. He also was completely seeing us as a threat. All these things were a threat to Giora Feidman, you know. But you know, not a nice guy. Sorry. Go ahead. What's that?
Thank you for being here.
Sure. I'm always here. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I would say vulnerability and resilience. I mean, I'll just throw that in. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Right, and I would say there's no difference, because when people talk about klezmer, they talk about laughter through tears, right? It's lively, but it's not a polka. I mean, seriously, if you want to, if you want to hear happy music, listen to a polka. That would be the happy klezmer. But never got that happy. Yeah. Come on, I mean, the dance tunes are like, come on, they're still kvetching. No, and Israeli music took the same tunes and took all the kvetching out of them. Illegal. They banned kvetching. They didn't just ban Yiddish. They didn't just ban the Yiddish papers. They banned kvetching. That's what I'm saying. I mean, so happy to, I'll be around all day. Please feel free to confront me or ask me questions. Okay, anyone else? Beautiful. One more question, right? Is that right, love? Yeah, okay.
So you're talking about the one-on-one teaching sort of complementing, getting tunes from the 78s.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's still enough of that able to, happen with sort of newer methods of transmission, like the Klezmer Institute archive or the other online archives that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I teach full-time at New England Conservatory, and I have students who come there from all over the world, especially Israel, by the way, to study with me. Because, as they say, I come from Israel, where there's no Jewish music. So yeah, I would say that if you can get, all transmission is how music is taught. That's all, I would say. And, if you can meet the people, great. And I would say in our generation, there are some great teachers. There are some very good teachers. But see, we went through training. This was training. All these people I knew very, very well. And I'm saying that opportunity is not there for the youngins. But we can try to convey that. And we can say, they're like, I found a record where, Jay and the Americans are doing Wo ist das Gessele. I go, okay, I think I got something better than that. I just heard Neil Sedaka sing a Yiddish Mama. I think, Sophie Tucker might be better. Maybe Yessel Rosenblatt. We can do that. We can kind of lead people to the resources. Bad news, they're not on Spotify. I'm sorry. That's a drag. So that's what's wrong with the current transmission. You have to have the mentors to show you where you can find this stuff. Yes? Oh, can we have quick ones? I mean, where do you all got to go? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Zvi Schooler on WEBD because his programs expose many people in New York, myself included, to Yiddish music.
So if I had time, and if I do another lecture next year, Zvi Schooler will be here. Because when I was teaching these cantors what they're missing, I played Zvi Schooler doing Gornisht, which is on the internet. You can find it. And just make sure to spell his name really weird. Zveescooler. Okay, but fine. But check it out. All the gestures, everything I've talked about. That's what you got to start with. You want to start with not Yiddish language. I learned Yiddish language at YIVO and there was no inflection. It was like reading. No, you got to have native Yiddish speakers living it. Native Yiddish speakers showing you what the culture is through the language. That will teach you Yiddish. That will teach you. And there's nobody better than Zvi Schooler. So thank you so much for that. Jonathan Aaron really hit me to that. Jonathan Boy Aaron hit me to that. So I just have to thank him too. Yes?
Okay, I'm gonna cut us off.
Yeah, that's
We are over time.
Yes.
But Hankus is not running away.
I'm not.
We do need to turn this room over, so I would ask you to go have some lunch, meet us back here at 1 o'clock. But also, if you need to talk to Hankus, you can meet him outside. There's
Yeah,
a
we
lovely
always
area.
have
And looks
the
like
rest
Seth
of the
wants to say
lecture
something.
outside.
I've got one late-breaking announcement. At 11:30, for the lucky 20 people, Eleanor Risa will be doing an intimate little pop-up workshop for half an hour from, what did I say? 11:30 to noon. Oh, sorry. And you got to go to the front desk, and it's free. There are only 20 tickets available, so the first 20 people to get those tickets will be able to go to Eleanor's pop-up, which will be also upstairs in one of the galleries up there. Okay?
Thank you, Seth.